Okay, first thing you want to do is if you're going to leave the line on your spool, you want to put a piece of tape across it. That tape keeps that line from getting loose in there, so I just do that to hold it down. Now this particular reel, the way you're going to take it apart, we want this door off right here, and it's opposite of the handle. So you see this little bar right here, and it's got a groove right there. You can get your fingernail in that groove and push that toward the handle. You can see it coming in and out right there. Now I'm going to spin it around so I can get to it easier. All right, I'm going to spin that up. You just spin that door up while you're holding that bar, and that door will just wiggle off there just like that. Okay, once you get it to that point, you can go ahead and take the spool out and set it aside. Now, one thing you don't want to do when you have a reel open is spin your handle, because when this thing doesn't have the shaft of the spool in it, it can get caught up there and you can grind your gears, and that's not going to be good for your reel. Now, to start the oiling process, first things first, I use this reel butter, reel oil, and you can get it nearly anywhere they sell fishing equipment. And the place I'm going to start is right down there, and I'm going to put a couple of drops in there. And you don't need much, just a couple of drops. Now, you also need a little bit right there. Just one drop right there is fine. And then if you want to, you can put a little bit on this shaft that slides in and out, especially if it's hanging or sticking. That can make a difference on getting your reel open easier. You don't always have to do that, but if you want to, you can. Now, if your button is stiff at all, you can put a little oil right here. See where this button is going to slide back and forth? You can put a little bit right there. I wouldn't put much. A little bit's good enough, and that might have been a little too much there. But that'll help you keep that button to where it moves good. Now you can put a little bit back here too if you want on the back side of the button. Okay, so you've got those two spots done. I'm going to set this reel down. I'm going to pick up the door. And now I'm going to put a couple drops right there. And that's just a bearing. And then I'm going to put just barely a drop on each one of these brakes. And that's pretty much all you have to do to the door. Now get your spool. And I like to put a little bit of oil on that shaft. Not much, but a little bit. And then on each side of this bearing, I put a drop. Okay, and on the back side on the shaft, put a drop or so. And now you can put the shaft back in your reel. You got to make sure it's lined up there, fits in snug. And then get your door, and it goes back on. You got to have it at an angle like that, and it snaps down. And then you can twist it, and it locks. Okay, so now you're free to be able to spin this reel if you want to. Now, on the front side, you'll see this bar that is in there, that silver bar. You're going to want to put a little bit of oil on it. Not much, but a little bit. And also, you can see in here, there's some worm gears. Now lube those worm gears a little bit. Not a whole lot. And then take your reel, spin it, work that oil down in there. Okay, now this is something from this point on that you don't have to do every time you lube your reel up. A lot of times that right there helps your reel a whole lot. This part is something that I would do every couple of months or so, depending on how much you fish. And I'm going to take a really little screwdriver. The first thing I'm going to do is take this screw out. Okay, then you have this gold piece right here that just is going to come right off there. It's supposed to come right off there. I just can't get my fingernail under it. There we go. It just comes off, set it aside. Now you've got a nut right here. And you can take this nut off. It's not going to be really tight. Set it aside, and then you can just lift your handle off there. Okay. Now, you see that little washer right there was on the back side of that handle. Okay. Next, you're going to want to get this dial that controls your drag off. Now you can basically just unscrew this thing, and then it gets really easy. You hear that click and stop? Unscrew that all the way off. Okay, now you have this little piece that's got a couple of washers in here, and then it's got a little, you can see right there, little piece of wire, and you can press on that wire and lift this off of that shaft. Now you've got two washers in there. I'm just going to set it aside right now, and now you're to the part where you need to oil. So just put you, like I say, not a whole lot, a few drops right in here in these pieces. Okay, and that's all there is to that. Now also, while you got this apart, is an easy time to take this tension knob off, and you can put a little bit in here too. And put that back on. Be careful not to cross thread. It should go on really, really easy. Shouldn't have any resistance when you go to turn that. Okay, so now I'm going to take these pieces that I took off here, and I'm going to wipe them down a little bit and get the dust and all that off of them. You may even want to wipe this shaft down a little bit. And if you do that, go ahead and put a couple drops of oil on it just to keep it lubricated there. Okay, now you just got to put this stuff back on in the order you took it off. So we're going to put this piece back on. You just got to make sure it's all lined up with the shape of the shaft there. And it's just going to slide all the way back down there, just as far as it'll go. Okay, and now you take your drag. Now, when you're putting this drag on, this is going to want to start spinning. If you'll hold on to this right here where your line goes through, you got to make sure you've got this lined up, because it needs to be very easy to put on. If it goes on cross-threaded, you're going to mess your threads up on that shaft. So make sure it just spins on real easy. And as long as you're holding that right there, when it starts clicking, you can go ahead and wind it down a little bit. And we can adjust this whenever we get it all back together. Okay, so you're to that point. I'm going to put this washer back on. And then your handle goes back on. And then your nut. Same thing with this nut. Make sure that you take the time to thread it on correctly. And once you've got it on, give it a little bit of tightness here. Not a whole lot, just a little. And then you put your gold piece back across. And this just holds this nut from twisting off and you losing your handle while you're fishing. Okay, now you can see right there, I don't know if you can see it or not, but I'm not lined up with my hole that the screw goes in. So you may have to back this nut off just a little or tighten it just a little. The situation I'm in, I'm going to back it up just a hair, and that gives me a straight shot to put this screw back in. Same thing with this screw, make sure you're getting it straight in there. It should go in really easy. Okay, so you've got that part done. All right, now the last thing I'm going to show you how to do on this video is to take these out and oil your handles. The way I do it, and you can do it with a paper clip or whatever, but I've got a screw that I just barely twist in there, and then that thing just comes right out. Okay, you can see down in there, you've got a Phillips head screw. Take that off, set it aside, and there's what you're rotating on with your handle, okay? So you've got a few little parts. This part moves, and of course you've got this shaft here. If you just put a little bit all around this, and you can just pop it right back on there. This is one tricky thing right here is sometimes this little screw is hard to get to go back in. Usually what I do is I try to leave it in this handle. And it seems like I can line it up a little better that way. All right, so I've got my screw back in. You can see that spins really good now. And then I just got to put my cap back in there. Just pop it back in there, should be about flush. And then any oil that I have on my reel handle, I'll just wipe off. Now I'm going to do the same thing to this side here. Now if you fish a lot, I would do this about once a month. I usually try to oil my reels about every 3 times I go fishing, but I don't necessarily take this part and oil all this in this shaft. Normally I just do what's around here and then inside the tension knob. But every tournament I fish, I go through the whole thing, and I also go through the whole thing about once a month or every 6 weeks or so.